Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, it's Jonathan Edelheit, President of the Employer Healthcare Benefits Congress and Media. I want to thank everyone for coming on our call today. So today's call is going to be the new rules of marketing in employee benefits, and we're going to, a little bit of our webcast is going to cover everything. It doesn't matter what segment of employee benefits it is. It doesn't matter whether it's corporate wellness. It doesn't matter whether it's self-funding, healthcare reform, voluntary benefits, any kind of niche solution. This is all about how everything has changed in marketing as we've known it over the last couple of years, and how it's really evolved. So to give you a little background, I think most of you on the webcast know about EHBC and our media. But we're the largest, to give you some background of where this perspective is coming from. So as we go through the webcast, it's, what's the background of, or why are we an authority on the marketing side is, we're the biggest influencer in the U.S. insurance industry. We reach about 500,000 HR and insurance professionals just through, our email. We get a couple 100,000 through our different magazines that we publish, and we have over 300,000 members in about 40 LinkedIn groups that we run, and we get about 1,000 to 3,000 new members per week. And we do a lot of education and training and roadshows all around the country. And we've had significant growth where our organization is growing every single aspect of it, each year, and it's all become because of these new rules of marketing. So I know that marketing, can be extremely frustrating, meaning what works, what doesn't work, where are you wasting your time, are you getting ROI, or spending a lot of time on an initiative and finding out there were no results. And it's difficult in today's world to really know what is really effective in marketing and business development and what is not. And then you have to look at who your target market is. So if we're looking at the insurance industry, it could be HR executives, or it could be insurance executives, or it even could be vendors and solution providers. That's your client base. But if you're dealing with HR executives, they're dealing with healthcare reform compliance, they're dealing with increased cost, administration, stress, dealing with stuff in their business life, their personal life, and it's very difficult to capture someone's attention. And there's so many different products and services out there today that there's only a small bandwidth to get to people in, and that bandwidth is now being inundated with now thousands of organizations trying to get to that one client. And then if you look at, if your target market is agents or brokers or consultants, they're dealing with healthcare reform compliance, they're dealing with the private exchanges, public exchanges, commissions disappearing, trying to create alternative models, states and insurance companies trying to eventually phase them out. They're dealing with enrollments, renewals. So everybody, has more distractions today and more stress and problems than they did 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a totally different game in trying to capture someone's attention or take a product or service out to market. And, this is the example I give today of the HR executive or the insurance executive today. They're doing 1,000 different things. They're on the computer responding to email. They're on the phone. They're, dealing with other paperwork and stuff, is that we're totally consumed. And it's what I call it is the white noise challenge. So now if you're out marketing today, you have a huge challenge of trying to penetrate the white noise and being one of 1,000 different issues, challenges, and distractions that potential prospect or customer has today. And how are you getting on their radar? How are you getting through to them where they're paying attention to your product or service or what you're doing? And by the way, this is only going to get worse. Every year, every day, every month, it's only going to get worse as there are more distractions and more issues. And then as you look at millennials until entering the workforce, you're going to have, with millennials, even more white noise and even more so, less of an attention span than you would to older customers. So there's a lot of challenges coming to our industry. Now, in the past, in the employee benefits in the insurance industry, it was marketing would be, let's work in traditional advertising and pay for print media. Whether that was in a magazine which could be a national magazine, it could be a specific trade magazine for HR or insurance executives, or it could be, advertising in some other, kind of media source. And I think we all know print media is dead. People don't read print magazines really anymore. I'm personally, I love looking at pictures and touching stuff, but I get 99% of all my information from online. And if we look at traditional advertising, I mean, there's really not even statistics that or reports that are coming out about print media today, just because everybody knows it's in such a good decline. But if you look at just newspaper advertising revenue as an example, starting in 1950, you'll see where it spiked up. And then in 2012, it dropped down. So it's actually, it took 50 years for it to hit the massive spike. And it only took a couple of years for it to drop. So basically 50 years to rise to a massive level and only 10 years to drop below that level. So now newspaper advertising is less than it was in 1950. And we're living in a digital advertising world where if you look at this chart, this is U.S. newspapers and magazines, and then you'll have Google. So if we, in 2004, that's not that long ago, you'll see that newspapers and magazines held most of the ad revenue, around $70 billion, with U.S. newspapers, taking about 45 of that, and then the magazines taking the rest. And, like Google, like Internet, you'll see with just a small fraction. Fast forward to 2012, and if you look at that, it's done the exact opposite. Now, newspapers and magazines are less than Internet, but interestingly, it's not where you've seen the Internet spike up to where print media was back in 2004. It's actually leveled off. So there's less money spent in print media. And the online media hasn't exceeded the print media from back in the day. It's actually kind of maintaining or going a little down, but online, it's where people are spending more money than today. Now, as we go through this, this presentation I'm doing today, our answer to you isn't going to be that all online solutions are the answer. You're going to really realize what are the tricks of, of the trade and where do you really do things on the online media side. And if we look at the evolution of marketing, what we see, it went from print, it went to radio, it went to TV, and now it's really going to social media. But you can get lost in social media. So it's like, what do you focus on in social media? And the interesting thing is, when the newspaper was around and they talked about coming out with a radio, they said that the person who was inventing the radio was crazy because you could never pick up audio and sounds through radio waves. So, but then the radio got invented. And then the thing that I love the most about this is the inventor of the radio then said that the concept behind the TV, and the guy who was trying to invent the TV, he said that person was crazy because there'd be no way to beam, visual images to TV. So the radio guy said the TV guy was crazy. But then it went to TV, and now what happens is no one really listens to radio. And now you've got a trend towards satellite radio with no commercials, which has really affected the regular radio that has commercials. And now we're watching that people are getting more information now, not from TV, but online news sources. And that, and then that shift is going to social media. And for the B2B side, it's really, LinkedIn. So, what are the 6 new rules of marketing? It's changed. Before, you would just put an ad out. You'd really sell hard to people. Now it's about business developing, creating engagement, creating branding, connectivity, creating long-lasting relationships, and creating stickiness. And I think stickiness is the most important part. It's no longer about the hard sell. What I find fascinating, and if we look at it from the social media perspective and what's going on and how everything is such a game changer, is if all of you weren't aware, do you know what the top read New York Times article this year was? It wasn't about the Boston bombing or anything like that. It was actually, and it wasn't by a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist for the New York Times or the editor or anyone. It was actually an intern from college who was interning with the New York Times for the summer. And he wrote what they actually called an article And it was actually a poll that you'll see on the bottom left that was called How Y'all, Youse, and You Guys Talk. And I'm sorry, Use, and You Guys Talk. And it was about how do you speak and pronounce words, and that determines where you're from. In just 11 days, and this was shared all over through social media, this became the top New York Times article for the year. So this threw off the New York Times tremendously because, with it, they realized it wasn't any of the hard-hitting articles or anything that they had written. This was actually just an intern creating it. And social media is how it became the most read article out there. So really, selling doesn't work anymore. The game has changed. It's not about the hard sell. It's about engaging your clients and prospects with fresh dialogue, educating them through new mediums, bringing value, and being a thought leader. And it's all about walking the fine line. So it's trying to sell your product and service, and it's actually not trying to sell your product and service, but instead being a leader and educator and making people want to buy your product versus actually trying to do a hard sell. So it has to do a lot with education. Now, there's a big term in our industry called thought leadership, and I think it's one of the most overused terms in the industry. And not because it doesn't mean anything, but it's because it does mean something. It's because it's misused. I would say, 90% of the companies out there using the term thought leadership are getting it wrong, and it's the most misused and misunderstood term in the industry. Because what it'll do is a company will produce a white paper that's just a sales pitch on their company or a webcast, and they will go out and push it out, and then they'll say, oh, we did thought leadership, we produced something. They don't understand what thought leadership is, and it's how it's not trying to sell your product or present your product. It's helping educate, people in the industry and helping provide them better knowledge that makes them more successful or information they find meaningful, where afterwards, they look to you as an expert in that subject matter, and then they want to work with you because they know what you're doing, not because you're presenting their products. And I'll go into, I think, some examples of that thought leadership a little bit later. But thought leadership is an entry point, and it's really meant to intrigue, challenge, and inspire people who may already be familiar with the company or bringing people who aren't aware of it so that you're starting a relationship where none exists and enhancing existing relationships. And whatever you do during that thought leadership, you don't sell anything except ideas, and you are always giving it away. You need to have a unique perspective, and you need to market through leadership like it's a product. So market thought leadership like it's a product or service. And there are a lot of different ways you can do it: speaking at events, putting out white papers, webcasts, educational and engaging content that you might actually, do online. It could be through social media or some other channel. It's really important to be a thought leader. So I just want to give, some examples. I think some great examples is it's a WorksTime, which is a healthcare reform compliance company. There was a webcast that one of the top national attorneys in healthcare reform did, and it was an update on what's going on with healthcare reform with the final rules and regulation. And it was sponsored, by WorksTime. So, it was thought leadership. So everybody, about 900 participants came onto this webcast. And if you guys are, very clear, aware of what goes on with webcasts, webinars or webcasts, sometimes people will get 5, 10 people, sometimes 50 if they're lucky. But I know with our organization, we're consistently hitting, that 900,000 mark, and WorksTime did it by bringing in a national attorney not affiliated with their company to teach everyone in the industry what the final rules and regulations were, and it was, and it was really endorsed by them. So it's raising awareness that as a company, you're really helping educate people and bring them solutions and ideas and helping them be more successful. And you can try to force yourself on customers. And in the past, the way to market and force yourself on customers was through print media or, trying to do cold calling. But once again, people don't have tolerance for cold calling anymore because they're busy with everything, so they're less open to things. So the old traditional methods on how to really build business have really changed. I think another great example of, thought leadership is, there's a company called Gift Card Partners, and, we worked with them to do an educational webcast. They were very interested in doing something with thought leadership. They actually came to us and they said, Jonathan, we don't want to just sell our product or services. We want to teach the industry, what they need to do to be successful with incentives. And they're the gift card company, and they partner with CVS on incentives for wellness programs. And what we did is we said, listen, this is great, and this is the kind of stuff that I love doing, is we got 2 large national employers to come on and do a webcast on how they're using gift cards to incentivize their employees. And if you're aware of what goes on in the wellness space, is no one shares case studies in wellness. No one does. I know our organization, we have the most current and modern case studies in corporate wellness, and we keep on releasing them, every year. Where I saw a business group here in the U.S. recently, just as last year, was using a corporate wellness case study from literally like 10 years ago. So we use very current ones, but we got, Hillshire Brands, the food company, and we got Sprint Nextel, the benefits directors, to share. This is what we're doing with incentives. We got about 800 people on the webcast to learn what they're doing, and it was powered by Gift Card Partners. That I look at is real thought leadership, and then Gift Card Partners had so much success with that, we worked with them on putting out a white paper that's coming out soon that, once again, it's, it's written by our organization, but it's 100% educational on what's going on with incentives, statistics, information, employer case studies that's going to be given out to the industry for free, and it's powered by Gift Card Partners. That is true leadership. I see so many white papers that are being put out today as white papers, and all they are sales pitches. And really, they're going to have no effect whatsoever in being a sales pitch. And the moment someone starts reading that first paragraph or two, they're going to realize this is not educational. This is a sales presentation on your product, and they're going to throw it away. And that's where I'm talking about the misuse of thought leadership, where people are saying, oh, we're doing a webcast, oh, we're doing a white paper. I just saw an organization that's doing, they just did a healthcare reform event, a live event, where they probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm guessing $200,000-$300,000 on doing a short couple-hour live healthcare reform live event. And I looked at, and I applaud them for trying to do a live event, but I looked at what they were doing, and one of the problems with healthcare reform and the education that's happening out there is no one's really telling agents and employers what you need to do. There's a big issue right now with audit preparation, because the DOL and IRS are going to go start auditing employers and litigation avoidance. So they didn't do anything that really brought a lot of facts and substance to the table. Instead, they got a host from a major news network, and they got a couple people in the industry together, and it was more of a kind of like a talk show where people are talking about issues with healthcare reform and debating stuff. Well, anyone can turn on CNN, Fox News every single night, or MSNBC, and watch that stuff. So you just spent a couple $100,000 thinking you're being a thought leader, but you're bringing the same thing the news channels are doing every night to people. You're giving no information, no new ideas, and in actuality, you're kind of creating the same thing that I would say is causing a little stagnation in the industry, is where you're letting people just express opinions on healthcare reform and debate it versus going into the real facts of what the law means and how to comply and what's coming next. So there's a lot of, I think, mistakes companies are making in how they communicate. So one of the things I think that's key too is to look at, return on investment. So there's millions of dollars every year that's spent in print magazines in the benefits industry, the insurance industry, and there are companies, most of them are spending close to $10,000 for a one-page ad. And the reality is no one's ever checking the return on investment. And they might be lucky if they're getting 3 to 6 leads per issue, if they're getting any at all, because some don't. I was recently at a conference with a company, a big insurance company that advertised in one of the benefits magazines, and I said to them, what's your ROI and how many leads did you get last year from advertising in a print magazine for a year and spending, about $120,000? And his answer is, I don't really know. We might not be getting anything, but it's just one of those things that we do. And I get that answer a lot. It's just something that we've always done or we always do, and so we keep spending our money that way. And it's just, that's not a really good answer because for the return on investment, you can spend $5,000, $10,000 and do potentially a webcast and get 1,000 leads of people who come onto your webcast or a white paper that thousands of people will read during the year, where you're not only educating people, but you're capturing the leads. Because when you do the webcast, people are registering for the webcast and they're answering the questions about, for example, do you do gift cards? Do you offer incentives to your employees? Do you offer, voluntary benefits? Do you have a wellness plan in place? So you get to ask those questions, whether it's a white paper or a webcast. So it's not passive leads. You're actually getting active leads, and you can make intelligent calls on people. With the print magazine, some of them still have that stupid card in the back where, someone's supposed to actually write what they're interested in and mail in the postcard to the benefits magazine, and they're going to send the lead to the company who is advertising. Come on, if that's not old school, I don't know what is. They're doing that now, but if you realize that, are you getting that lead a month afterwards, 2 months afterwards? It's crazy and it's so ineffective. So there's definitely a new medium out there. We just did, we're releasing our 2014 social media and insurance survey, and we surveyed 800 agents, brokers, consultants, and HR executives. And the statistics, I think, were really amazing. 83.6% of agents and brokers receive their industry updates and news from social media, with LinkedIn being the top source. 83.6%. 51% of agents and brokers have chosen a insurance, employee benefit service product or a new vendor from social media. So they're basically making decisions on new products or services through social media, with LinkedIn being the top source. So they're using LinkedIn to source out new companies to work with or products or services. 65.5% of agents and brokers feel they receive the most timely and updated information from social media, and that number is 3 times more than trade magazines. So that means that here is where they're getting their updates and news on social media, which is LinkedIn, and this is where they're getting it from trade magazines. And why? Because when you pick up the trade magazine, you're getting it a month afterwards, a month and a half. The news is all outdated and old. 93% of HR execs and benefit managers receive their industry news from social media, twice as much as trade magazines. So they rely more on trade magazines, but 93% from social media. I think that is extremely strong. And then, as you saw from the previous slide, 50.9%, almost 50% agents, brokers choosing products and services from social media. 46.7% of HR and benefits executives have chosen a service, product, or vendor from social media. So, and this is a trend that's going up and up and up every year. And yet, a lot of companies aren't active on social media and selling their products and services, or aren't doing it right. 1 of every 3 professionals on the planet is on LinkedIn. So, and no, by the way, I'm not getting paid by LinkedIn for this presentation. So it's all about developing a customized media strategy, creating the stickiness, creating the mousetrap, and it's going to be by creating long-term relationship. This is what changed: long-term relationships and creating stickiness. And for any of you who are on the phone, like from the insurance rep side, I think it's important in becoming extremely educated. Back in the day, I know about 30, 40 years ago, insurance reps were really educated on their products and services. Then it the insurance companies stopped providing a lot of education and training, and it focused more on, let me take you out to lunch, let me take you out to golfing. But now more than ever, as a marketing person, no matter who you are, you need to be on your game. Whatever space you're in, if you're in wellness, you need to know about every wellness product, what's going on with wellness legislation, privacy laws. You need to go, how the Affordable Care Act, what are trends and issues going on in wellness. The same thing with voluntary benefits, and the same thing for healthcare reform. Because what I'm finding, and I'm getting more feedback on, and I'm your fan, I'm actually, this webcast is for you guys, is that people are getting fed up. The agents and the HR execs are saying, at this one event I was at, an agent came up to me and said, you know what? I'm tired of all these voluntary benefits carriers. She said they bring nothing to the table anymore. They're just all have the same product, and they're not doing anything to help me as an agent succeed. They're not giving me education. They're not giving me any tools, and they're doing nothing to differentiate themselves. They're just saying, use me instead of someone else. And I'm hearing that more and more. And I think people, agents and HR execs and others, they're looking for more. They're demanding for more. And if they can get that for someone, you'll create a more loyal customer. And that's where I'm talking about the long-term relationships and creating that stickiness. So, what is stickiness? It's creating marketing channels, methods, and strategies that bring existing clients constantly back to you, but more importantly, bring new prospects to you versus you going after and trying to bring them in. So it's keeping people engaged consistently within your organization so they're always in front of you, and you're not out constantly chasing them. And with some of the new tools in marketing and how the game has changed, you can do that. You can put a lot of effort into the point where things start coming to you versus you chasing them. And quantity of visitors doesn't equal quality. So here's a big, this slide and the next one I think are going to be really important, because over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of focus on, people doing digital ads, online ads, banner ads, focused on impressions. And so what is the return on investment on putting up a banner ad on a magazine's website or an advertising website that says you're getting 100,000 impressions? Or even what about click-throughs? But for the sake of this, let's say 100,000 impressions per month. Would that get you excited? I wish I had that in a poll so we could ask everyone. But feel free to type it in the Q&A or the chat. Would you get excited to know you could put an ad and 100,000 people would see it as an impression every single month? And then the next question is, are you really measuring the leads from impressions? Most aren't, or most are using some outside media company. So if you're paying a magazine or a media company for those ads, I would love to sell you 100,000 impressions. Have you gone online and seen that I can go out, or you can go out and buy 100,000 visitors for $350? I bet you there are some people on this call who their company is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some that are spending millions in different magazines based on impressions, and potentially someone out there is buying $350 worth of impressions per month to get 100,000 people to get redirected to their website, not real viewers or customers, and your company's spending a massive amount of money on that traffic when it's not real traffic. So if you want to pay for 100,000 impressions and pay $10,000, $20,000 a month to a magazine or media company, I've also got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd love to sell you. And I think, going back to this impression side of it and the views, it's amazing of how much money is spent in this area and how some of the media and ad companies have focused on the impressions and the views. But when you really delve into the numbers and you look at the organizations and it's what's their readership and how has the readership changed, and how many people are following them on social media and other things, you can actually break down really well what their true influence is. It's amazing, the companies that, they'll say, oh, we're getting 100,000 or 500,000 people to our site per month. When you break it down and they have almost no Twitter followers, almost no people on Facebook, and, or their LinkedIn groups are really small, and you realize, so if we start breaking down these other things, we realize you're not really getting those impressions every single month. So, why LinkedIn, if we're now moving on to the social media marketing side? It's the social network where all your customers and prospects are. It's easily to identify prospects and connect with them. It enables actual relationships, and it cuts down a lot on qualifying work and tail chasing. And why is it so important on the B2B side? Because, for example, if I say Apple, I love Apple as a company, I'd love to have them as a client, but I want to reach their HR manager or the benefits manager, I have no idea who they are. I know if I try to call them on the phone, I'll never get them. With LinkedIn, you could go and search them out, and you could find them because they might be a member of a group you're in, or you can find them on actual LinkedIn. Then you know who they are. Maybe you have a chance to connect with them. We'll go into that in a little while, but then you also know who you can try to reach out to outside of LinkedIn. Who is that right person? And I think, some of this stuff everybody already knows. I mean, you can create connections with it. You can create groups. You can post content and engage, and you can send messages. But I would say, 1% of people are effectively using LinkedIn. 99% are really not, and 99% know the power that LinkedIn has and the advantage of it. And one of the challenges of LinkedIn, just like any other social media channel, you can get lost in it, you can misuse it, and you could end up using a lot of bad practices instead of best practices, where you actually end up having the opposite effect to what you really think. And some of the, more basic things is creating the right profile. A lot of people don't even know how to create a profile right that is going to make people, want to connect with you, allow people to find you, allow people to be impressed with you and think that you're an actual leader. And then also, if you're on the marketing side and you don't have the right profile built with all the right best practices and the key secrets that you need to use your profile, you're going to spend all your effort on trying to develop business on LinkedIn, whether it's, trying to be seen as a thought leader and engaging or connecting with people, and you're not going to realize that a lot of that result is because of your profile. And you can alienate people on LinkedIn. You can send the wrong messages. There's a lot of bad messages that are sent on LinkedIn. There's a lot of bad postings that are sent, and how do you actually respond to people? And I think one of the key things is the power of having your own group on LinkedIn. And a lot of people don't understand the benefits of having a LinkedIn group. Like I said, we run about 40 different groups on LinkedIn with about 300,000 different members across the different groups, and we're adding about 1,000 to 3,000 every week, and that actually doubles each year. So while it's 300,000 this year, it'll be 600,000 in 2015, 1.2 million in 2016. And one of the key things about LinkedIn is when you're connected with people or they're in your group, from a marketing perspective, is you could have a database of emails, but we all know that, within a year to 2 years, a lot of people are moving around to a different company. So that email database you have is gone. It's old, and you can't get to those people anymore. Where if you're engaged with them on LinkedIn, they keep that LinkedIn account travels with them, so you're always connected with them. You can always reach out with them. So are you in the right groups? Do you know who are the leading groups? And are you sure that your clients and prospects are in there? Is the group educational or sales oriented? There's a lot of groups that you might be a manager, might be in as a member in LinkedIn, where pay attention and you'll see there's a lot of sales, messages and selling going on and very little education. And so what ends up happening is, I call it spamming. There's a tremendous amount of spamming on LinkedIn, and so no one pays attention to anything that anyone posts on the group. And then what happens is there's no point in being in that group, and if you try to post anything or do anything in that group, you're not going to get any real results. Now the challenge is, if you try to create your own group in today's world, you're pretty much screwed. Meaning that there are 2.1 million, more than 2.1 million groups on LinkedIn, 8,000 new groups created a week. An average user joins 7 groups, and when they join, they want to join the leading group. So how do you stand out from the crowd if you're starting a group? Because most people start a group and very few people join. And one thing you have to realize is, some people don't realize this, it's I call it live or die. If you create a group, it has to be successful, because if you have a group that isn't successful with very few members in it, then when people go and see that group, that you're running it or owning it, then they're going to look and say, wow, they created this group 3 years ago. They have 20 or 50 or 100 people as a member. They must not be a leader in the industry. And then you might create a group and it fizzles out and you don't post any real content in it. So then the people that you have in the group really stop engaging with you and stop seeing that you're a leader. And some of those people can be your clients. And, some of the things you have to realize is, if you're not a group owner or manager, you really have very limited capability in what you can do on LinkedIn. You actually can Send a message to the first couple hundred people, and that's it. You can post a discussion that may be deleted, may be moderated, may be paid attention to or not. But what most people don't know is what you can actually do if you run a group. If you actually manage a group or own a group, you can send an announcement out, and this is an example of our healthcare reform LinkedIn group, that went out to 27,000 people. You can drop an announcement in someone's email box once a week, and you also can do other things where, this is our healthcare reform group, a little screenshot as of just, an hour ago, about 27,470 members. You can send individual messages to each people in your group whenever you want. You can change people's roles, permissions, and you can actually search for people and do very advanced searches. So you can go ahead and say, hey, I want to just look for directors of benefits, or directors of HR, or I just want to search for agents, or I just want to search for people, my prospects that are in a certain city or region. And you can search for them and actually reach out to them. So there's a lot of powerful tools that you can really do to engage and connect with people if you are owning a group or managing a group, or if you partnered with someone who's running or managing a group. Now, one of the interesting things is that 27,470 participants, that's more than any benefits magazine in the industry. And that number is growing exponentially every week. And I think that's the power of social media, is that more followers than something being delivered to someone once a month in print, and you're delivering messages, daily or once per week. So I think that some of the bad practices that happen in LinkedIn is constant sales messages, and spamming, which dilutes the message, and there's no moderation. And, I know in our groups, we're very specific on making sure it's educational content. So when you post on LinkedIn, for example, I consider a bad practice where you'll see people, they'll post and there's no real message, and they're just linking to their own blog or to their own personal website or own personal social media. That is total self-promotion. You're not educating people. When you post something in LinkedIn, it's about getting people engaged in a discussion. And does your company provide LinkedIn training now? A lot of companies I don't think do, but does yours do, and do they budget for LinkedIn training? How not to be a spammer. I want to give this example. A lot of people don't know, but if you start paying attention, we've weeded this out in all our groups. There's a lot of fake people on LinkedIn and a lot of spamming. And what I mean by that is a company here in the U.S. hires someone overseas in Asia. They go online somewhere, they steal someone's picture, they create a fake name, a fake profile, they go and they join groups, and they start posting messages that are not, they're not real messages. It's a spam to promote a company's product or service. And this is an example of one of them, where it's there's a website out there, and I'm going to give an example. Let's see if there's another one. So here's a website called All in Career that's posted. You might start seeing it in some of your LinkedIn groups, where when you go to the website, there's nothing there. It's just a blog with no contact, no information, that people are just posting random articles on. But when you go into LinkedIn, you'll see all these people that work for this company in all these different titles. And then what you'll see in there is, I think this one is, there's Vet International Education, went to this education from Viaja Memorial, and they're from, it says London in writing and editing, but this person speaks Hindi, Spanish, English, and Nepali. That's a pretty big diversification in language. And then on this sheet here, you can't really see it, but it's showing they've got all these different people. I really wish this screenshot is definitely way too small. It should be much bigger. But you can see the different titles that the people have and what they do, and it's very clear that these people don't work for this company. So, how can you create a group today? Because having a group, I think, is one of the most influential ways, or subgroups, to get your message out. It creates that stickiness, because if you can create a group, what are the advantages of creating a group? You can push out educational content. You can invite your prospects to it, or you can have someone invite all your clients and prospects and push out content. And then their peers and colleagues see that they're in the group, and they join. And that's how you create that stickiness and that mousetrap, so that then you have the third degree of other people's peers and colleagues see that those people are in, and then more and more people keep coming, and then you exponentially grow. And as a marketing person, you get all your prospects and leads and start coming to you. And, we've had amazing success with a lot of our educational webcasts and white papers where we're getting 500 on a low end, and typically anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people on our educational webcasts. And that's specifically from having these LinkedIn groups that we're managing and owning, and constantly pushing out education through them. So, I think there's really great tools you can do. If you're a marketing person, you can have someone come in and actually go and invite and connect you to all your prospects from a personal connection standpoint. Now, one thing that I would definitely recommend for any marketing people on this call is if you can get your company to focus on a really big initiative on LinkedIn. And I don't consider really, cutting edge stuff saying, oh, let's go pay to have a banner ad on LinkedIn, or sponsored content pushed out through it. I really, doing very specific initiatives is you can arrange it where you are the thought leader in your company. So the company invests in your LinkedIn initiative, but you're the face of it. So you're getting all the personal connections, you're getting all the thought leadership out there, and if there's a group being run, you're managing the group. And so what ends up happening is today, you're the leader in your sector, in your niche, in social media, and in LinkedIn, which will be the future of our industry. And that means that you become the most valuable player in your company and the most desired employee in the industry for other companies, and your existing company doesn't want to lose you, and everybody else wants to recruit you. And so that is a big reason that you should be focusing a lot on social media, because like I said, someone can invite all your prospects to connect with you, and once you're connected, you guys, people perceive that as you're connected, you're a friend, you're a colleague, and they're more open to listening to you. And you could have someone invite people into your group so that instead of you trying to create a group and having no success, you can build out a group over the next couple of years that has thousands of your prospects and clients in it, and everybody starts coming to you versus you chasing after them. So that's, extremely important. And I think specifically, in social media and marketing is doing very niche marketing to a very specific audience and target. I think I already covered before some of our groups that we manage, but just to give an example is in 4 to 5 years, we built up our healthcare reform group where we have now it's 29,000 because these statistics, literally a week later, 2 weeks later, they changed. 29,000 people in our healthcare reform group, more than the publications in our industry, 19,000 in corporate wellness, 27,000 in our benefits, health, and welfare professionals. And for those of you who haven't realized, there's other verticals to go after. We help manage and run the hotel and hospitality big LinkedIn group, 180,000 members. So, if you're in the benefits space, you don't just have to be a member of the benefits group. What about hotel and hospitality and all the HR executives and decision makers in the hotel and hospitality space, which is big for voluntary benefits and other things? Guess what? No one's going after that sector whatsoever, but that's a niche sector that you can design stuff just for that, and they're looking for solutions. Like I said, is that example, that stickiness of, we're adding 2,000 to 3,000 new members per week, where print media is shrinking every single day and other forms of marketing are shrinking. The impressions don't work. Pushing out sales white papers and webcasts don't work, and so you have to really think differently. One of the things that you have to think of as a marketing leader, which are you? Are you going to be the lemming that just follows every other, thing that everyone else is doing, just being a member in our group? Are you going to try to do something outside the box and create your own group or really grow out something big? Are you going to focus on the social media side, the LinkedIn side for marketing, doing that thought leadership of white papers, webcasts, being seen as a speaker, things like that? Are you going to be the lion? Are you going to take the hunt on and win? Or are you just going to follow everything? Or are you going to be that person at your company that, like, from that answer that I got from the guy at the conference a little while ago, oh yeah, we advertise, we don't know what the ROI is, this is just what we've always done. I get that answer so much. So be that leader in your company to say, stop, let's not do that. Let's look at how we can acquire leads and be a thought leader in a much different way. So if anyone on this call, feel free at any time, to post and type in questions and answers. Be happy to answer anything, or feel free to reach out afterwards. Also, I would like to, invite everyone, to our annual event, which is the Employer Healthcare and Benefits Congress. It's September 20th through the 24th. It is in Washington, D.C. We get about 2,500 attendees, about 130 exhibitors. It's actually the biggest benefits and trade conference in the industry. If you guys haven't been to it, you've been to the other industries, this is like a 10 event of the year. All the big national employers come and present what they're doing at cutting edge in corporate wellness, healthcare reform, self-funding, voluntary benefits technology. It's the only event that the administration participates in, and we get the big keynotes from the people running the exchanges for the HHS, Alan Tashunsky, who does all the fines and compliance for the IRS, the DOL. We get cutting edge companies like Tesla, who was, named the, the best car company by Consumer Reports. They're coming to speak this year. Google speaks, and they'll come and speak on what they're doing that's cutting edge, and it's not allowed to be filmed or covered because they don't want it getting out in the industry at all. But we're actually creating this year a whole marketing track and even a marketing certification for the industry, where we're bringing in all the leaders in marketing and sales, not from our industry, but on a national level. New York Times bestsellers, people who are national presenters and trainers on marketing to teach really the best practices in marketing and to take it to the next level. So I think it's important. And another thing to think about that I didn't even go into, is email communications and how you're communicating with your clients and your messages. So really, I kind of ran through this fast. I mean, I could spend, almost the whole day going over LinkedIn, from how to create a profile to how to send personal messages, to what to post, how to respond, how to send messages to connect with people in a way that's going to get them to connect. I could go on for a day about, how you're communicating via email, and your I would say your newsletters, your mass communications, or, what you do at events and stuff. So it's really difficult to kind of cover this all in a very short period of time. But this is something that I think that you really have to focus on. The ROI is huge, and there's so much opportunity in social media. And a question came in from Mike McCormick, which asked, do you assist with LinkedIn marketing? So yes, this is something that we've actually kind of rolled out as a company this year, because we have such a large channel with these 300,000 members, and we do assist companies in doing marketing campaigns and things like that. And we, really do it, and I'll be honest with you, is we get very aggressive with it, with products that are very innovative that we believe in. That doesn't mean that, we will turn down your product and service, but one thing that we do is we always take an innovative approach to it. We will never just push out a message for you. So, like at our annual conference, one reason why our conference is now the biggest event in the industry and why it's growing by about 40% and we bring in senior leadership is we don't allow sales presentations. It's all extreme intense education with about 90% of it. And then we have a sponsored track where people who want to be thought leaders can pay and sponsor a session that's clearly designated as a sponsored track, but it has to be 100% educational. It has to be approved by the educational committee, and the PowerPoint has to be approved. So you want to be a thought leader, be an educational thought leader. Don't come and sell. And we do the same thing on LinkedIn and social media and other channels and one thing I would say we specialize in is we look at, someone who comes and says, I have something like I have a gift card and that deals with incentives with employees. How can I market this? And we look at it as, how can we create something that provides tremendous value and education to our membership and our audience and our social media following, but can be tied to someone who's sponsoring it So people can see that they're a leader and want to do business with them, but they're not being sold to. And that is an example that I love using is Gift Card Company, which is a great company, where we put together Sprint Nextel, and we put together Hillshire, the food company, in doing case studies on what they're doing. And so we have a lot of relationships with big employers and other national leaders. So if you have a product or service, my feeling is, in my opinion, is don't come on and market it yourself. If you don't have that client who is willing to go and do the webcast or presentation with you, you can come to us. We can piece that together so that you're not selling your product. Someone's talking about how that product or service has worked in their company and why it's successful. And then you're there to kind of moderate and ask the questions and answers, and then to really talk to people afterwards about it and follow up with them. So that is really the thought leadership that I think is a difference between what normal selling and what happens in today's world. And I think that 99% of stuff today is still that same marketing, the same cold calling, the same emailing, the same messaging. And you don't want to get a reputation on LinkedIn or other social media as that guy who just blasts me with messages. I get them every day where you realize this person never once even looked at my profile to determine who I was before they actually sent me that message. One question that came up was, is this presentation going to be available afterwards? Yes, it takes about 24 to 48 hours, but you'll be emailed the webcast with the video. And then you can go ahead and watch that afterwards or share it with your colleagues. And if any of you guys want, we're going to start doing some more in-depth presentations going forward and webcasts on LinkedIn. We're going to bring in some employers to do presentations actually on what they like or don't like from vendors and how vendors should contact them and approach them. So we're going to try to do a lot of more educational content this year, helping you guys as marketers and as salespeople understand what's the best way to approach the C-suite by getting a C-suite person that can tell you their view of things and where you can ask them questions, and the same from the employer side. So I think it's important, and I think there's such a great opportunity here. If you're in your company on the marketing side, be that person to try to bring new ideas of how that company could really engage through webcasts and pushed out to large social media like to get that lead acquisition. Because can you imagine you do one webcast and you get 1,000 leads of contacts? That you can't even quantify that. People go to conferences and they'll say, I'm happy with getting 2 to 3 leads from that conference, or 5 to 10 leads. It's a game changer, and there's so much difference. But if this is about, if you can become the leader, then you're going to rise up in your company. And then when whether you stay with that company for life or whether you leave and move on to another company, that's going to follow you everywhere. Your connections, your progress, your thought leadership. So with that, that really ends the event. You can email me if you want to get a hold of me at John@Employer Healthcare Congress. It's JON@EmployerHealthcareCongress.com. And like I said, I know our website isn't on here, but our website is for the actual conference is EmployerHealthcareCongress.com. If you guys are on this webcast and aren't in our LinkedIn groups, feel free to email me. I'll send you the links. Our 3 big ones is, our healthcare reform group, benefits, health, and welfare professionals, and then corporate wellness. And I wish you all success in all your marketing initiatives. Thanks for coming on to the webcast, and have a great week. Take care.